started my first full-time job and my manager put a one-on-one on my calendar, I remember thinking, what is this for and what are we even going to talk about? If we needed to have a conversation about something specifically, wouldn't we just put a meeting on the calendar for that item specifically? I soon learned the answer was no. Over the years, I've learned that employee-manager one-on-ones are essential not only to getting your work done, but also are detrimental to career growth. That said, how much you get out of your one-on-ones is going to depend solely on what you put into them. In this video, I want to specifically talk about the questions that you should consider asking your manager during your one-on-one time with them. These questions will not only help you get your work done, like I mentioned before, but they'll also help you understand the bigger picture and the why behind your work, which is essential to your career growth and development. Before we get into it, for anyone new here, hi, what's up? I'm Janelle. This is Janelle Knows Money. I'm a compensation professional that's obsessed with helping you get the job, get paid, and then helping you figure out what to do with that money. Hit the subscribe button if this sounds interesting to you. I come out with new videos every single week. And we have a kitten here. Okay. See you, Nobi. Before we chat questions, I want to do a little bit of an employee/manager one-on-one FAQ to get just some of these standard questions and answers out of the way. If you're only here for the questions, I promise this won't take long. Hang in there, or you can just skip ahead if you want to. So the first question that I want to clear up is, what even is a one-on-one? A one-on-one is a dedicated time on your calendar that is set aside specifically for you and your manager to have discussions about pending items, upcoming projects, career growth, or anything else that you might want to have a conversation about. Really, they just give you the time and the space to connect with and create a relationship with your manager so that you can have a positive experience at work. Question number 2, how often should you be having a one-on-one with your manager? How often you have a one-on-one with your manager is going to depend on you and your manager's preferences. That said, in my experience and what I would recommend is having a one-on-one with your manager at least once a week for 30 minutes at a time, and that would just be a bare minimum. In some circumstances, you might want to have 2 a week for 30 minutes each, or even 1 a week for 60 minutes. Again, it's going to depend on the circumstances. Sometimes when you're starting a new job, you might want to have more time set aside when you're learning and you're growing and you're trying to understand the full breadth of your job duties, whereas other times you are further along in your career, you understand what you need to do, you understand your duties, you don't have a lot of questions, so you might not need to have those meetings quite as frequently. Question number 3, if you've never had a one-on-one with your manager, but it is something that you would like to start doing, where do you start? What do you do? How do you ask? So if your manager hasn't put one-on-one time on your calendar, I would encourage you to be proactive in putting time on their calendar to have that one-on-one time where you guys can have discussion around project and duties that you're currently working on. If you're a little bit nervous to do this, what I would recommend is sending your manager either an email, a Slack or a Teams message saying, hey, I'm thinking about putting some designated time on our calendars every week where you and I can just have a conversation about where we're at in projects, what you need from me, and what your expectations are. Is that okay with you? If your manager is kind of hesitant and is giving pause to putting that time on their calendar, I would recommend letting them know the benefits of being able to put that time on their calendar. For example, you could let them know that having a one-on-one will allow us to resolve any issues or obstacles that we're having in projects early on, which will then increase the efficiency of the project so that things can move along more quickly. You can also let them know that you want to do this so that you and your manager can touch base on your goals regularly so that you can make sure that you're meeting their expectations and that the goals that you set at the beginning of the year are still appropriate later on in the year. And you guys can see if there are any shifts or changes you need to make to your goals to make sure that you are still developing and improving as an employee. So these are just the basics that I wanted to cover about one-on-ones. If you have any other questions about one-on-ones or specifically how to have conversations with your managers about one-on-ones, leave a comment below and I will get back to you. All right, now let's move on to the good part. We're going to talk about the 15 questions that you can ask your manager during your one-on-one. Note that I've organized these questions that we're going to talk about into different categories. There are 3 of them. The first group of questions that we're going to talk about have to do with your daily duties and upcoming projects. The second category, we're going to talk about questions that you can ask about your career development and your career growth. And then that third category is just some additional questions that I think are important to ask your manager but didn't fit into either one of those first 2 categories. So it's just kind of a miscellaneous category, if you will. So first up, let's talk about those questions that you will ask about daily activities, daily tasks, duties, whatever you want to call them, as well as upcoming projects. I typically ask these questions to get a better idea and understanding of my manager's expectations for the tasks and the projects that I'm working on. They also help me understand what I should be prioritizing. Managers like to know that you're on the same page as them and will see you as a high performer and a team player if you focus on the things that move everybody forward together. All right, so for question number 1 that I would recommend asking, I would say something like this. Right now I'm focusing on X, Y, and Z. Would you like me to continue to focus my time here? Or can I take on other tasks that would also help you? This next question is one that I like to ask when I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed and like I'm being pulled in a million different directions and I'm having a hard time prioritizing. It tells my manager that a lot is going on right now and I have a lot on my plate. And then it also asks for advice in terms of how to prioritize those things. So it goes like this. I feel like we have a lot going on right now and I'm being pulled in a million different directions. Would you be able to further clarify for me what our biggest priorities are right now so that I can focus my time there? Again, this just helps pull priorities back into place so that your manager can then further assist you and support you in the ways that you need as you're moving through a time that's kind of overwhelming. Question number 3 is another question just asking for advice from your manager and helping you manage the things that are going on when it comes to your workload. So it goes like this. I'm finding that I'm consistently getting stuck on X. What would you recommend that I do in these circumstances? Again, this lets your manager give you some direction in terms of where to go so that you have this overarching umbrella of understanding what you can do in some of these circumstances so that you don't need to check in with them every time, and so you have a sense of direction moving forward when you're dealing with X type of obstacle. Which is a great segue to question number 4. Something that I like to ask my manager is, if I need assistance with something, what is the best way to get your input or support? If there's anything that I've learned from working with different bosses at different jobs is that each person has their own personal style. One manager would prefer that you send everything via email, another person wants it via Teams or Slack, another person wants a phone call, another person wants a calendar invite every time they want to have a conversation about something. So it's always good to get that clarity up front from your manager to better understand how you can get their input and their support and what is going to work best for them as well as for you. Question number 5 is something that I ask towards the end of our one-on-ones almost every single time. Is there anything top of mind for you that you'd like to talk about that we haven't discussed yet? Again, this allows your manager to give input in any other areas that they might need some assistance in that you can then step up and provide that assistance for them. Moving into the second category of questions for career development and growth. One of the biggest mistakes that I see with folks in their careers is that they're being more passive in the way that they're dealing with their career development and their career growth. It's essential that you're having regular performance conversations with your manager in order to move your career forward. Your manager cannot read your mind. It's up to you to tell them what kind of projects you want to work on, what your goals are, what your dreams are for your career. And once you tell them that information, it is then up to them to help you and assist you in being your best advocate, being in someone who clears pathways for you so that you can grow and develop in your career. But if you don't tell them and you don't let it be known what you're interested in, where you want to go, and what you want in your career, they can't help you. So make sure that you are asking questions and having these performance conversations with your manager regularly so that you can move forward in your career. So here's my first question within the career and development section. During our last team meeting, you mentioned a project that our team will be working on in the future. I'm incredibly interested in working on that project. Would it be possible for me to work on X as a part of my development? I'd be more than happy to assist in any ways that you felt were appropriate. Again, this is you being proactive. You saw a project, somebody mentioned a project that you're interested in at the company, and you're specifically asking to be on that project so that you can further develop. I have never met a manager that would say no to something like this. They're going to be excited that you're excited about learning and that you're excited about developing, which segues us to the next question, which is, I'd love to learn more about X. Who would be the best person for me to connect with to have a conversation about and learn about X? Would you be able to make an introduction for me to that person so that I can have further learning and development when it comes to X? Again, this is you taking control of your learning and your development and asking specifically to have conversations with people across the organization so that you can better understand and learn a specific topic. Never ever overlook the people as resources within your company to further your learning and development. Next question is, I enjoy working here and want to better understand how I can continue to grow in my career. What skills do you think I need to continue to master in order to get promoted? Some folks might see this question a little iffy because they'd be nervous specifically to ask about getting promoted, but again, your manager doesn't know what you want. They don't know if you want to get promoted or if you want to stay in the role unless you ask. So always ask. It's never going to hurt to ask. This next one is about asking about different resources that the company might be able to provide you in order to help you facilitate your growth. It goes like this. In our last one-on-one, we talked about the skills that I could further develop in order to get promoted. I did some research and found that there are some different courses and conferences that I could go to that would help me further develop that skill and learn more about how to implement it at work. Would the business happen to have a budget to help me with some of the costs that might be associated with that? Again, don't be afraid to ask for your company to sponsor you in some of these endeavors, especially if they're skills that you're building in order to make the company better, in order to better do your role so that the company can become more efficient, they can gain more revenue, etc. It's only going to benefit them if you're engaged in your work and you're engaged and excited about learning additional skills so that you can be better at your job. And perhaps they might not have the budget within the year that you're asking, but if you let your manager know this, they can then plan for money in the budget for some education for you for the next year. Again, if you never ask, you don't know. Okay, last question within the career development and growth section, and our 10th question overall so far. It's, since we last chatted about the skills that I could develop, do you see that I've been improving? And if not, could you give me a little bit of extra clarification around what your expectations are for me delivering on this skill? Again, it's just a way for you to check in on how your manager thinks that you're performing so that when you come to the end of the year, when you come to performance review season, you're prepared to have conversations about your performance and you've been taking it seriously throughout the year. So you've been consistently doing better month over month in improving the skills and experiences that you have. Okay, so we're down to our last 5 questions within the miscellaneous section. These are questions that I typically ask my manager during one-on-ones, but didn't necessarily fit into the other 2 sections, but wanted to provide them to you as a resource because I thought that they might be helpful. Okay, so this first question does go a little bit with career development, but it's, would it be possible to do a mid-year check-in on my goals? I want to make sure that I'm on track and confirm whether or not we need to make any adjustment to the goals because of unforeseen circumstances. We might set goals at the beginning of the year, and they might not necessarily be the goals that we still want to have for the end of the year. You know, we go into a year thinking we will get all of these things done, and then because sometimes of unforeseen circumstances that you couldn't have predicted or your manager couldn't have predicted, we need to shift those goals. So it's important to have those mid-year conversations with your manager so that you can understand whether or not some goals need to fall off your list and you need to add some for the last 6 months of the year, or if you need to shift in some other way that makes sense so that you can achieve your goals. Because the whole point of having goals is that they are achievable so that you can be successful. And if things are shifting constantly throughout the year, we want to make sure you're going back to those and resetting them for the future. Okay, this second question that I like to ask my manager regularly is, am I meeting your expectations? And if not, can you relay to me what expectations I'm not meeting and give me some more information about how I could be better meeting those in the future? Again, still within a performance realm, but I find that is always really helpful in a work environment, in a professional environment, is to, right, be professional, but at the same time still be straightforward. If you want an answer to a question about whether or not you're meeting expectations, you're doing a good job, I would just recommend you ask your manager. They will tell you, they'll give you an honest answer. And if they don't, then that's a whole other set of problems that we can talk about later, but definitely just be straightforward and ask them how they think you're doing. This third question that I like to ask is, are you happy with our level of communication? This is an important question to ask, especially if you have a boss that is potentially a micromanager. You want to make sure that they're feeling comfortable with the level of communication that you're providing them, that they're providing you, and this gives you a chance to further clarify what that looks like. Some bosses might want you to do an end of the week summary that says these are all the things that I've accomplished over the week. Maybe they want you to have a check-in on a daily basis. It really is going to depend on the person, but you're not going to know what they feel comfortable and what they need unless you ask them. So make sure that you ask whether or not they're comfortable with the level of communication you guys currently have, or if there are any adjustments that you can make for the future. So number 4 is something that's important when you're coaching up. And I think sometimes we need to give feedback to the people that are managing us so that they can also meet your expectations. And this is something that's hard to do because it doesn't always come well received. So I find that it typically is a little bit more well received if you ask First, if you can give some feedback. So how I would do this is saying something like this. Would you be open to receiving some feedback on X? So this way that they also know it's not just broad feedback, it's feedback on a specific project or a specific task or duty, or maybe some additional support that you need. Typically, people will say yes, and by saying yes, they're almost consenting and allowing you to give them feedback, which sometimes will make people feel more comfortable with receiving it. Okay, question number 5. This is something I ask at the end of a one-on-one every single time, no matter what, without fail, similar to kind of what we talked about before. What I say is there anything else that I can assist with? Another way that you can say this is there anything else I can take off of your plate right now? I think it's important for managers to know that we're there and we're open and we're willing to take some additional things on if it's going to make their lives easier. And again, only of course if you have that capacity within your workload and on your plate in order to take some additional things on. I'm not encouraging you to take on so many things that you're working so many hours, but always consider asking your manager this. A lot of times my manager says no, but I do think it is just a thoughtful question to ask at the end to let them know that you're here and you're a team player and you're open and willing to take on some more things if they need some assistance. So now that we made it to the end of this video, what I really hope you got out of this is that it is incredibly important to have consistent open conversations with your managers regularly. Every manager is going to have a different preference for one-on-ones, but again, what I would recommend is doing it at least once a week for 30 minutes at a time, just so that you can make sure that you and your manager are on the same page. It's never gonna hurt to have those additional conversations so that you can continue to build your relationship with your manager, because at the end of the day, they are your best advocate. They're the person that is going to go to bat for you. And so it's going to be important to try to build and create a sustainable relationship with them when it comes to your work. You want them to have the perception that you are here and you are open and you are willing to do whatever it takes to get your job done in a timely and efficient manner. And this also gives you the opportunity to have that two-way conversation about other things that might be going on. So maybe it's perhaps not that you can take on these additional things, but maybe perhaps you need to have a conversation with your manager about the fact that your workload is too heavy. So these conversations are so essential to you also having a positive work-life balance and you having a positive experience at work, while also being able to, then grow in your career and better understand what your manager's expectations are. I think so much of being successful at work is being able to have those open communications with managers and other people around you that clearly communicate expectations so that everybody is on the same page. Thank you for making it this far in the video. If you like this content, make sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe so that I know to make more content like this. I come out with new videos every week. If you have any requests or questions, leave them in the comments below and I will make sure to get back to you. Thank you so much. Bye.